Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I am your host, Scott Ramp. I'm here to talk to you about a lot of different things that are happening in the news, city of Missoula, and beyond. Let's jump right in. Thursday, the U.S. Congress met the debt ceiling, and what happened next was basically just the treasurer just being like, okay, we're just putting the snooze alarm, and we're just going to try to see if we can hold this out as long as we can, as the both the new House-controlled GOP is looking to keep funding going to continue to legislate. So right now it's all on the whole snooze alarm. We can speculate even further, but that's as far as we can go right now. How is Biden's confidential documents doing? Well, a special counsel has been called to investigate Biden and those classified documents he had from his vice presidency. You know, memos, briefs, classified documents, especially when it came to Ukraine. So far, these files were an honest mistake followed by a major investigation following. So far the president is cooperating, but there is still a lot of speculation now and about our leaders' past and their intention of these said documents. But at the same time, they're going for most powerful person on the planet to becoming a civilian, if you really think about it. So another angle can see that this president cannot be trusted with state secrets. So either this president or the future presidents cannot be trusted with state secrets, leaving our elected officials in the dark, potentially for future leaders. Many of these classified documents were found in Biden in this garage. So far, a special counsel was created to handle this investigation, which turned up more than 20 documents in and around the president's residence. California floods. California has been drenched by atmospheric river storms since late December, putting a dent in the state's long drought, but also causing flooded power outage and debris flows. Hey, when you have intense weather events, there's going to be a lot of fallout from that. In some parts of Northern California, cars were submerged, trees uprooted, and roofs blown off their homes. There have been at least 20 short-term related deaths, storm-related deaths. At least 20,000 acres of farmland were at risk of flooding, the National Weather Service said. Additional rain was expected since last Friday, and over the weekend saw 41 of the 58 counties affected by the storms. More than 41 inches of rain has fallen this season in one of the drier areas of California, making it the sixth wettest storm event in record history. Just to make it clear, Missoula alone has about, parts, and mostly parts of Montana have 15 to 18 inches of rain a year. So we're pretty dry up here as well, but we rely on our snowpack melt and the rivers that flow through here and irrigation for a lot of our farmlands. I mean, our eastern Montana is just usually fairly dry, and most of the farmland have to be irrigated or it's like the only way we can actually farm up here. So replenish itself, and Missoula is in a good position if you know how to irrigate, because we are all dry up here. The break in the weather happened earlier this week, and the damages are estimated to be $30 billion according to Bloomberg. But of course, they did mention that back in 2017, they had some storms because of the winter storms, which saw about $830 million ticket back in 2017. So $30 billion might be a bit of a stretch, but there's been a lot of communities, and like I said, the counties that were affected are in the majority of the, let me just double check this again. Just hold on a second. Yeah, 41 out of the 58 counties in the state of California. So that's a big chunk of the land for sure, because California is definitely one of the bigger states in the United States as well. And also, just to kind of the last note, the more recent stuff is that recently beaches of Southern California have been littered with trash, as many of the safeguards preventing trash from entering the ocean have collected on the beach as a result of the flooding. People since COVID, of course, have been leaving California for more rural, spacious areas. And one thing about red states becoming bluer, Montana has the opposite, as Montana welcomes more and more right-leaning residents. So New York Times made an article earlier this week as well, which dives into the political rights movement from the blue states to get onto one of the most fastest growing states in recent years, Montana, which is considered the third fastest growing state in the United States right now. Folks leaving the larger cities are one of the many stories, but this story really dives into more of the political leaning towards conservatism. So far, New York Times alludes that 2010 attempt to bring in corporate aka dark money to allow for campaigns, and in 2011, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Montana Supreme Court's ruling to allow for money to enter the states for the political time. And this was basically the first time outside money can really just going to be injected into our political arena since 1912, in which that Congress basically just said no to the Copper Kings and said, no way, that's not going to happen here. But we could even go further back to old Democrats that lean more towards pro-slavery before the state of Montana was even a union in the first place. So there's just a lot of interesting kind of ideas about Montana, the idea of escapism from the urban city environment as well. That, from my perspective, found ads that would fall in line with the national narratives in terms of, these elections that happened, that essentially, just from my viewpoint, has overtaken the concept of Montana values, which for the Governor Brian Schweitzer said very clearly in an interview that the state's motto should be none of your damn business, which is both a joke and a statement. So Montana is a very interesting crossroads in this article and is highlighting the growing trend of the conservative voice in Montana. But this also harkens back to Hillary Clinton trying to pour money into her 2008 bid for presidency. This was actually one of the big things that Montana kind of gave a big major pushback, because her program was actually like a half an hour television broadcast of her kind of telling her history and it's basically like a documentary, but at the very end would be like she's running for 2008 president. And then, I think there was just a lot of this going on here and just weird. And so the legality went back and forth, and Montana Supreme Court basically blocked a lot of this money. And then, of course, it went to the Supreme Court, which superseded the state's Supreme Court. And so there was just kind of like, there's a lot of history lessons behind this as well, but also just kind of like you can see a lot of these trends kind of moving in and out of the state of Montana as well. So back to 1912, the congressional vote that banned the dark money from coming in, making it easier for people, just the people like Joe Sixpacks of the world, to run on the national stage, which at this point is a copy and paste candidate that fits into a national narrative. And that's a statement that I'm definitely making, is that there's a lot of national narratives. And after the election in Pennsylvania, you'd think that the National Dems would get wise to maybe don't treat every state as a cookie-cutter situation if you want to get the holdouts to vote for you. That and Monica Trunell, who ran for Congress in the more liberal part of Montana, should have been really campaigned in Missoula as much as she should have campaigned in more of the more rural towns in the state of Montana. Because, a very interesting story, but, something that does bear repeating. Missoula, like Montana, Missoula is like Montana, but without the Montanans. I said that completely wrong. It did not flow nicely. So moving on, the Montana legislature jumped into the abortion debate with a new House bill. If adopted, State Bill 154 would create an act stating that the Montana Constitution's right to individual privacy does not guarantee access to abortion or government funding for said abortion. Montana doesn't have those turnkey state laws on ban abortions like the former Governor Brian Schweitzer said in my previous section, none of your damn business. Kind of rings true to the Montana State Constitution, which celebrated its 50th anniversary from the 1974 legislation session that broke out and did the Montana State Constitution. Which, I think I've said this many times before on this on my morning show, is that, the Montana State Constitution basically is like our own kind of Bill of Rights in a way. And, the one thing it really introduced was the concept of dignity, which superseded a lot of these abortion rules, because the idea is it's like, whatever you want to do, we don't want anything, we don't want to bother you. Dignity, privacy, that's like one of the biggest things in the state of Montana as well. And so in many ways, this is what a lot of the that's a lot of things that are moving forward as well. And even mentioned last week is that the Montana State Constitution may be up for an election, depending upon if the supermajority of the Conservative Party in the state of Montana does move to ratify our state constitution in the next 2 years. So let's move back to this. This bill is very short, and according to Helena lawyer Mike Malloy, who said that the bill oversteps the legislative's authority by seeking to insert a constitutional interpretation into state law. Whether you believe abortion is immoral, this law is very little to do with preventing abortion, but controlling the flow of money from government programs that go into the practice. We live in a world where having a kid is a luxury, and the only way they can thrive is based on their parents' income. However, Gianforte has open legislation to give about $1,200 a year for kids 6 and under. For your information, most childcare costs about $600 to $800 a month before they go into the school system. At that point, you'd be saving money to have a stay-at-home parent, but cost of living has been going up, and you can barely sustain one home income versus multiple sources, and at that point, you're basically working just to have daycare staff spend more time with your kids than you do. So up next, we have some fun from the Winter Days camp, and we'll be hosting a spring break camp similar, if not better, to the winter camp. So without further ado, here is Office Nightmare, followed by our our spring break promo.
Hey, can I use your scissors?
You need these scissors? Don't you have your own scissors?
Yeah, but yours are huge. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Whoa, where am I? Hey, where am I?
This is an office. We're doing serious business right now, as you can tell.
I'm typing.
You're not doing anything. You're just pretending to do stuff.
Welcome to the world of employment.
Can I work here?
Of course, you've always worked here.
Where am I?
The office. This is fun.
But what are you guys actually doing here?
I cut scissors.
But what do you do when you're not using the scissors?
I use those scissors.
What if there was no scissors?
Then I invent them over there.
No, but like imagine if there's no scissors ever. Can't invent anything.
I do this.
What kind of special skills do you bring to the office?
That's a tough one.
Well, that's good enough for me. You're hired.
Awesome. What do you want me to do?
Sit at that chair and sit at that computer.
Okay. So what do I do? Do I turn on the computer?
No.
No.
Do not turn on the computer.
So what do I actually do?
You type like your life depends on it.
Then you'll be fine.
Fine from what?
I don't get paid enough to tell you.
Okay.
We just go last at 11:59 p.m. a minute before it's due.
This is quite boring.
Just get your report in before 2 o'clock and you'll be fine, okay?
What report?
Just do it.
All I need is my scissors and a hard day's work.
When are we gonna finish our work?
When it's time to finish.
When is it time to finish?
Just finish your report by 2 p.m. and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Hello? It's the boss.
Oh, what is it?
He wants us to finish our reports by 12.
But it's 11:30.
Hey, no!
I don't even know what to do.
Type!
Wait.
What's that? It's a birthday horn.
Oh. Whose birthday?
Yours.
My birthday's not until 3 months.
It's the birthday one. It's your birthday.
Happy birthday to you. The office plant.
Thank you. When are we gonna go home?
What's home?
Yeah. What's home?
Like the place you go after work?
What do you mean after work?
Before I came here.
Wait, you were always here.
Yeah, you were always here. What do you mean?
What? Bye. Hey, why am I back here? I left that door.
Yeah, and you come back in from right there.
Yeah, that's the door. Once you walk up there, then you
see
come
it?
right
It's the
here.
door.
This is getting confusing. Hey, how do I get out?
Hello, humans. Are you looking for a creative outlet for your children? Kids get to let their imaginations run wild in stop animation, live action, or blend them together. All sorts of wonderful things. Sign up online or call for more information. For 5 days in the middle of spring break, we will have a camp at MCAT.
You're not doing anything. You're just pretending to do stuff.
Welcome to the world of employment.
All right, welcome back. Let's talk about some movies that are coming out this weekend. It's time for Pre-Critic, where I prejudge a movie based on absolutely nothing but my pre-bias. So jump around in. We're kicking things off with a, the girl from Pitch Perfect was, the Red Cup video, right. She's doing a movie where she's pounding on the table and stacking up and destacking the red cups. She's doing a movie about being submerged in water or something from, this is the head, and she's like, barely can breathe. So my assumption is that she is in a situation that has her trapped and it feels like she's about to suffocate unless she plots herself out of the situation. Anyways, this is actually a drama about a lady who's stuck in an abusive relationship, and her friends are doing an intervention to help her. The only abuse I see would be to see this film. Next up, we have The Sun. Wolverine not doing the X-Men thing. I'm a pass, but enjoy an Oscar bait film that came out in January, thus cementing this movie into the shadow realm forever. Enjoy a series of coming-of-age tropes like, he's not a good dad, but he's trying. His first relationship didn't work out, and yet he has a teenage son as a kid to deal with because drama. I enjoy a series of, I never saw it that way, or I never knew you, but I wish to know you. Cry, 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 daddy drama with plenty of fun times in an obscure genre of film people, I guess, like? I don't know. Up next is another genre of films that people kind of don't really have to do anything, but the nice thing about webcam footage movies is that they're easy to make and you can wrap up filming within the same day. Enjoy a live stream of a girl trying to use her phone/computer to find a missing, hence the title. This is a spiritual sequel to Searching, which is pretty much the same thing. So what I mean by the same thing is imagine the camera's watching you on your phone, and you can see what you see on your phone as well. So you're basically air sharing your phone to a television monitor while you're giving a presentation, and everyone can see what you're searching for, what you're looking at, and that's kind of how it is. So it's cyber crime-solving, stalking, which realistically you'd get distracted by your dumb YouTube and TikTok video type things. Speaking of TikTok, enjoy a rehashed content, but redubbed for your viewing pleasure. This movie is called Bad Blonde, a crime noir from the 1954, and here is a brand new Dubbin Stuff.
I just need to find that Charizard.
Did someone say Charizard? You might have already heard that Pokemon series is coming to an end. I have all the cards. Come, we cannot speak in public. Let's go.
Don't grab me. What are you doing anyways?
Well, one thing you should know about me is that I have quite the extensive collection of Pokemon cards. This series is ending, by the way.
I used to really watch the series when I was a kid.
Well, maybe that's why the series was canceled.
I knew you were evil when I saw those pop collars. But you're not wrong. In fact, maybe we should have all been watching Pokemon this whole time. I'm going to go home and watch Pokemon. Well, maybe the original series before they replaced the voice actor with another lady. I kind of dropped off after the Orange League.
At least Tracy wasn't a womanizer like Brock.
Isekais are important to comic relief, after all. You wouldn't know that.
You're quite funny. The tropes between men and women watching anime? I thought our mutual hate for isekais would be a bridge builder between our two kinds.
Pop collars and those like...
Well, regardless of our love for anime, we still have some business to conduct. I have the Charizard card that you always wanted.
Well, alright then, let's see it.
You think I'd be stupid enough to bring it here?
Just because they're ending the series doesn't mean that they're going to be ending the production
It's been
of cards.
25 years. They're gonna probably have 25-year anniversary cards for this occasion. And besides, most of the old cards they're not gonna reproduce.
They pulled the same stuff for the 10-year anniversary.
You can reprint the same old Pikachu over and over again, but that doesn't mean it's gonna be something different.
Once you've seen all Pokemon cards, you've seen them all.
Well then, I guess my collection means nothing to you. I bet you've only bought Pokemon cards and just left them in a drawer somewhere, and didn't even play the game. It's very complicated. It's like Magic the Gathering, but better.
Don't bring Magic the Gathering into this argument. I can't believe she says Magic the Gathering. I like Magic the Gathering.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's time for some city council. Every year, it's kind of like the wrap up of the fiscal year 2022 and the implementation of fiscal year 2023. We're talking about, yes, the city budget. The city budget goes into full effect as we jump right in to your city council reports. Let me refer to my notes before I get too much of a tangent, but the whole idea of budget and finance committee meetings are to assess what the budget is for the fiscal year of 2024. And so they'll be talking about this back and forth, and they'll really start hitting it in March. But as of right now, this is the transitional period in which they're going to be talking about money that was added to the fiscal year, money that was taken out, then this kind of stuff. It's basically the concept of checks and balances within the budget. Fourth quarter budget and first quarter budgeting for fiscal year 2023. Lee Griffin, city staff, talks a little bit more about the budget. So this is Lee Griffin.
Our first set of amendments for FY22, close out FY22. On the left, we have departments, descriptions, revenue accounts, revenue amounts, expenditure accounts and descriptions, and the expenditure amounts. Now, sometimes you won't see an associated revenue amount, like under this one on fund balance. And that is because the revenue dollar amount doesn't need to be technically added to the budget. The funding exists within the books already. When you do see the dollar amount, the funding source will be stated, and often it's something along the lines of transfers between accounts. So that's, again, why we call these housekeeping items.
All right, and speaking of housekeeping items, one of the major things that the city is moving to do is a refinancing of the baseball stadium. The place where they play minor league baseball in Missoula, and at off times they want to handle their debt by refinancing. And so far, Logjam Presents, aka Nick Shakota's company, rents the space for concerts and whatnot. Heidi West, City Council, asks if this is worth it, and Lee Griffin responds to her questions.
And refinance.
Correct.
And then there would, I assume, be a cost to refinancing just if I were to refinance my house. But over the long-term life of the bond, it would be in our benefit.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, the Civic Stadium was hit particularly hard with COVID. So that was one of the reasons we wanted to look into getting more advantageous terms to allow that as a fund to be able to weather those types of things.
And just from my own personal perspective, I refinanced my home back in early 2020, just as the pandemic was starting to start building up. So there's a lot of interest rates that really definitely dove at that point, and I definitely took advantage of that, and so did a lot of people I knew. The city voted to refinance the site to aim for better rates and to save money in the process. Whether you know this or not, the ballpark ain't a big money maker. And with rough patches with Logjam Presents in the beginning, it's not the moneymaker it could be, like an outdoor ballpark in the middle of Missoula, Montana, we deal with a lot of the winter time. Half the time it's too cold to have events there for extended periods of time. It seats at least 3,500, and it does have a record of nearly 5,000 from a Billings versus Missoula game back in 2017. So we'll end that there, and we'll move on to housing redevelopment and community programs, which is a big part of what the city is doing to help combat homelessness and moving forward with adding more affordable housing, and also a big chunk that they're going to try to figure out emergency housing solutions for folks who are in between homes, couch surfing, and those who are not necessarily using a lot of the services that could be in place. So we're kicking things off with a Sleepy Inn Hotel, which is considered a brownstone designation site, which means that it does require some federal dollars to help clean up the space as it's being deconstructed, which is a process in which they will preserve about 60% of the Sleepy Inn building, while the rest will see the landfill. So Tyler Wall, the brownstone specialist from Missoula, spoke a little bit more about this particular topic.
The Sleepy Inn site would be one of the first to be redeveloped and will likely be the catalyst for other redevelopment in the area. The city's realtor has advised us that the property will be more marketable for sale as a clean, level site with the building removed. The project is supported also by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, where the proceeds from the sale of the property will go towards funding affordable housing.
Okay, so the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was put aside during COVID and ARPA funding, and any of the assets that the city of Missoula sells, in which West Side Corridor is what this whole project is going to be about. They're looking to sell this to a developer that would create a commercial residential mixed kind of area and just kind of revitalize the West Side Corridor entrance into the downtown Missoula area. So this area is kind of like near Russell Bridge, Sleepy Inn Motel. It's kind of like in that kind of sleepy area where it's not that sleepy, but they always see a lot of traffic. And what they want to try to do is they want to improve this general area by just removing the Sleepy Inn Motel and adding on to certain different things as well. So after deconstruction, and like he said, 60% of the Sleepy Inn will not be sent to the landfill. And on top of the developer will use these plans the city drew up to create a West Side Corridor. I talked about this in length, but like I said, it's a commercial residential. They really do want to have a hyphen on residential. In terms of affordable housing, with the height limit of about 5 stories. I mean, this general area is fairly commercial already, so it's kind of easy to kind of have this site be more of those kind of buildings where you'd have the Equinox and Solstice building that was built through the affordable housing. So the money that they would generate from this, the city owns the property because they bought the Sleepy Inn for that $1 million, and they're going to be using the money that they sell this for, which they're definitely going to see some good money from this as well, especially at this time, and especially being prime real estate. And the total cost of the cleanup of this would be $83,000 from the Brownfield program, and Missoula Redevelopment will pitch in about $213,000 as well. Up next, we have tourist homes. So one of the big pushes that the city wants to regulate more of the Airbnbs and try to move forward on this, but also create a registry for people to find better housing solutions if they have some of the factors of being basically kicked out of their home or the home that they're going into fell through. And so that's just kind of like one of those many things that kind of happens. Montana James Community Development talks about the permitting process of Airbnb and how the city wants to move forward with typing to curve short-term housing / tourist homes.
So this cost, or this process, by our conservative estimates, costs the city $555 for new registrations. And then for the renewal process, it's a bit more streamlined, and the application just has to go through review by our staff to ensure that the property has met all of those requirements previously and that it meets the renewal requirements. And that process costs the city $205 per registration renewal. So,
all right. So, yeah, it's registration and, permitting costs, and a lot of the money and overhead they want to try to do is to help create this registry and overlook, kind of figure out what houses would be available in case of the high demand and need for it. And so far, the main idea behind this was for the city to regulate and create a registry of available homes. The city is trying to launch a program that benefits residents who lease a home or ADU to low-income housing, and part of the Airbnb short-term rentals make it easier to create a sense of availability. So this is a program that they're kind of in the adolescent phase of it. They're trying to figure out how they can implement this kind of stuff. Availability is more important because it can curb demand by exposing the supply. I'll also talk about this in the next segment, but we'll stick to this for right now. Montana James talks about monitoring these properties, and so this is what she had to say.
We have existing costs to the city based on our complaint-based enforcement at the time. So right now, whenever a resident calls in a complaint about a tourist home operation, that requires a significant amount of staff time on the code compliance team to review the property, do that outreach to the property owner, share that information about registration requirements. That is a cost that that we have. We've had ever since the ordinance was in place, and so that's factored in. And then as well as the Granicus dashboard software costs as well, that will help us, kind of improve the efficiencies of that outreach. We've had that dashboard, this is our second year now, and that has improved the process for our code compliance team. So that's factored in, as well as a bit of time from our housing program staff to check that dashboard regularly, track the numbers, and kind of factor that into our housing landscape work.
All right, so Montana James continues to talk a little bit more about the further a fairly new system being put into place. Most problems, like she mentioned, are complaint driven, but turning your private property into a money-making business, it kind of loses the right to some form of privacy if you're inviting strangers in your home with the power of an app on your phone. So think about it like that in terms of this. But at the same time, some of your neighbors are very concerned about the free-flowing groups of people coming in and out, maybe being too loud, maybe not being too loud, and be like, hey, we can't even contact the owner of the property because they're off for the summer, they're on sabbatical, and they're renting out their home for small amounts of time. So Jennifer Savage from City Council reflects on these fees and the processing involved with that. Hold on one second, let me find that. All right.
We have got to make sure that our communication pieces and the processes are in place as we move forward. I'm happy to vote for this public hearing, and I'm even happy to vote for the increase, but I feel like with that, the processes have to get streamlined, and that includes the county health department's health inspection as well. I'd like to note for the record too, that this increase in fee does not include the county health department's fee as well, which can be $200 to $250 depending on if you're on septic or not. And then the county health department also requires that you have a city business license, and that I think is $60 or so as well. So I just want to point those things out and get them on the record. Happy to vote for the public hearing, but hope that we can make sure that these communication pieces and streamlining the processes are a part of this conversation as well.
All right, so a big part of this, it would be moving forward on this public hearing to see, just how people feel about this. And, she went on to talk about how these short-term rentals like Airbnb already have. Okay, so let's see here. Where am I right now? All right, so we actually have a public comment. So this is Lynn Redding, who is a Airbnb host and has worked out of state. Talks a little bit more about, her experiences doing these short-term rentals as well. So this is a perspective of somebody who would be using these permits.
Like many people, I have, coped with finding my way to continue to live here. And most of the time that I've lived here, I've had to work out of state. So at any rate, I guess I would go back to the first point of a place to call home, because we're looking for diversity here, and short-term rentals actually answers that for people, whether they're looking for a one-night stay or whether, like me, I'm attempting to make it more of a lifetime stay, and have always been on the edge, frankly, of whether I could stay here.
All right. And so, from that perspective, it's the idea is it's like, hey, people are trying to script and save and try to hustle whatever they can to try to get the money to make ends meet. And a lot of these permitting process could also go into being a detriment to a lot of these short-term housing moving forward with this. I mean, it's a risk, but at the same time, another section on the heel of tourist homes are using registry to find for displaced folks. Community engagement was spurred by the prevalence of acquisitions of mobile home courts and naturally occurring affordable housing. NeighborWorks has been fighting for the sale of these court/trailer parks, otherwise manufactured retail properties. Then they lease it into their ownership. So the whole idea is that they would buy, NeighborWorks would buy the property around them, and then essentially they would use that as a middleman for each individual of the property to basically buy the parcel of land around their the trailer, which is a 50% increase from the rent, but another story for that without the purchasing power, the new owners of their trailer parks would have see their rent raised by more than 100%. So either way, the rent's going up, but it'd rather be mortgage versus rent. So that's one of the things that they move forward with this. I always like to mention NeighborWorks, even though it may or may not have anything to do with this topic, but I think it's a great program for a lot of people who are in these kind of mobile homes to try to get some kind of form of independence and own the property around where they live outright. So Emily Harris Shears talks about the data gathering from this, and this is what she had to say about the Airbnbs.
As I talked about last week, we feel really strongly that this work of housing displacement outreach and the memo that we wrote as a result supports the strategies that are named in A Place to Call Home, which is the primary body that guides the work that we do as the city's adopted housing policy. And this project supports the work of supporting housing consumers, reducing barriers to new supply, and also aligning our funding to preserve and create new housing. Understanding this from a person-centered approach helps us understand where we may be able to collaborate with partners and talk through what the Housing Trust Fund can provide in terms of eligible projects, as well as allows us to have a broader conversation about zoning needs and about the access for housing, as we talked about last week, and I'll talk a lot about in the recommendations and actions that we're already taking.
All right, so many of the things that were moving forward, and Emily Harris Shears was a big part of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee, and so part of this was that they had the money that they would go to, and recently they used the money through this committee to give to the people as a solution for them to help pay the rent for what was the name of it? God, I always forget what it's called. I'm so terrible. It's called Centralized Housing Solution. I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but the Centralized Housing Solution is basically through United Way of Missoula to help promote people to stay in their homes as well. So let's see, where's my next quote? Emily heads up the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee, I've presented in length about this, yep. Repeating a lot of stuff. Emily talks about a new program that promotes landlords or property managers to step up through this next segment that Emily has to say.
And then the voluntary incentives program is another recommendation and also current action that we are taking in our division. And I know that this has come before council previously, but it's a strategy of our housing policy work. The program currently is in a testing phase. We're utilizing incentives with developers as they opt in to evaluate the impact of current incentives. All of the work of the voluntary incentives program, as the name indicates, will be opt-in and voluntary, but we're working with developers now to sort of test things and strengthen them as we work on finalizing the parameters of the program. And
so one of the main things about the program is to use a lot of the funding to kind of help encourage landlords and property managements to let people stay there. And, you know, a lot of the big kind of things that kind of like the barriers that a lot of people do is that you know, a lot of people who struggle to pay the rent, a lot of the landlords and property management just like, oh, you know, it looks like you struggle to pay the rent. I don't know, I'm not so sure if we want to like have you live here. You know, just basically economic kind of like barriers as a result of that. This would provide bridges, the voluntary program for landlords to try to do the right thing to folks getting into housing with the public-private partnership, which has have income restricted rental units, but it is voluntary as of right now. Emily Harris-Shears talks about the newbies coming into Missoula and dealing with barriers and using this program called Fair Housing Consideration. So this is a whole nother level of what the city is trying to do to basically bridge the gap and get people into homes who just plop into Missoula.
And this is a great resource for landlords and property managers and for the community as a whole to understand how we can best welcome households to properties and to rentals in our community that may not meet the kind of standardized or normalized housing criteria that we currently utilize, like expecting rental history or credit history, which may not be things that are that people are able to provide if that's not a context from the country that they're coming from.
Yep, because a lot of times there are a lot of systems put into place that kind of either brings you up or pulls you down. Credit scores, history, anything like that. So if there's a gap in there, you better have a good reason, because a lot of times those gaps are usually a red flag for a lot of property owners and people renting and for people trying to rent to folks. The biggest push for emergency displacement fund for those being evicted or dealing with lack of options after leaving their current site. Nothing worse than basically having a place ready and it fall through just in time for you to at least be up. Like I said before, a centralized housing solution that passed through the United Way of Missoula was meant to keep people in homes, but this will allow for access to emergency housing rather than just being like, oh, you can just go to the POV. And that a lot of times doesn't work out for a lot of people as well. Emily talks about redevelopment and those affected by construction displacement, which is another avenue looking into keeping people in housing, even though their place that they were living at is being remodeled.
We have worked with the current planning team to add a 2 additional questions to the intake form that just really ask what is the current, who's currently living there and will they have to move in order for this development? That is really data for us to be able to do outreach and support to developers to offer solutions and best practices around how we support people with potential displacement. It is not a requirement that developers participate in this. It's really our team developing some one-pagers and resources to be able to say, here are some best practices when you know that your tenants are going to lose their housing. You may consider, stopping their rent payment at X date so that they have time to pay their deposits and other things. You may consider having a central point of contact to communicate with your tenants about what's going on, how the timing is changing, all of those things.
All right, and even if you really think about it, is that, hey, you always got to be careful who you hitch your wagon to. And renting, yes, it is cheaper, but it is getting more and more expensive, and housing is getting further and further away from people as well. Is that, the state of Montana is very heartless when it comes to just being like, oh, you have basically 30 days to vacate your home if you basically get told that, yeah, we're not renewing your lease. That kind of thing, but they do have to give you a warning. That's the whole point, is if they don't give you a warning, they can't essentially kick you out, but at the same time, it's very muddy waters when you start getting into private property and just looking into renters' rights. So it's definitely something that a lot of people who are renting should also look into, just to make sure that they're not being essentially screwed over by their landlord when their landlord decides to up and sell. So, just think about it like that. Communication is an important key in a lot of these moving forward. And I think even with what happened with the property that's just adjacent to the library, Daniel Carlino basically took point into saying that the landlord didn't give enough time to the residents, even though basically they gave the landlord of that particular site that they're redeveloping, I believe they gave about 6 months of notice to the tenants, and a lot of them were just not happy because having to move versus wanting to move, it's 2 different kind of mindsets when you really think about it. So Emily Harris-Shears with my last quote, talking about some of the stigma when it comes to the scarlet letters, not scarlet letter, but the voucher system in which the city of Missoula tries to incorporate to help people get into housing in the first place.
We talked last week about the experience of voucher holders and feeling that the tool of a voucher doesn't often bring the stability that they anticipated. I gave some examples just a moment ago about people who had been long-term tenants. Then they were either priced out from the payment standard, which is a structural thing that's important to have, but it is an experience people are having in our community where they can't, even with a voucher, keep up with the rental market and have to find something new. We heard experiences of people having that gap in stable housing and being unhoused again and then returning to stable housing. And so we brought those experiences to the MHA in the fall. We talked with them about the broader themes that we were hearing, and it was a great opportunity for us to just strengthen our relationship with the MHA. We heard from them that they are developing a new website, which they believe will alleviate the duplication of paperwork that applicants and voucher holders have been experiencing. They're hiring a marketing and outreach position that will support community messaging and hopefully some of that community engagement.
All right, so I'm going to quit it right there, and I want to talk a little bit more about Missoula Housing Authority, which is on track to opening about 600 new units of affordable housing within the spring of this year, and with the Trinity Navigation Center, which is going to be offering a good chunk of that dwelling units for folks as well who are in transitional housing. This is many of the things that are moving forward to kind of help curb a lot of the higher demand of affordable housing in the city of Missoula. And back to the vouchers, I've heard many people complain about the voucher system in place. There've been some public comments saying that vouchers are much like a scarlet letter. We're just like, oh, so you're paying with a voucher? I don't know if I have 30 other applicants who are more than willing to pay, if not more, just to stay in here. So I don't know about this. So you kind of think about it like that, and it's easy to be greedy, but at the same time, if you think about it from a perspective of a landlord, it's easier to have tenants in there that can pay rent versus people who cannot pay rent. So the voucher kind of, in a lot of ways, I hate to stigmatize it, and Emily did talk about the stigma behind it, and I'll talk a little bit more about how some people thought of this as like a way to be like in and of itself its own barrier. But if you think about it in another perspective, that the vouchers means that the city is kind of helping these folks try to get into housing, and that they know a system well enough that they could utilize a lot of the programs in place to help pay the rent. But who knows? It's the whole idea is that if you make your landlord or property manager do the extra work for you, it might not turn out the best for that as well. So I'm just thinking about it from the perspective of a landlord myself. So there's just a lot of information, a lot of things, and there's definitely going to be an interesting kind of deal. But most of these, they were in committee meetings. They're going to talk about these more in public hearings for Monday's meeting. And you can find out more about this by going on to the city's website, ci.missoula.mt.us. It is a great website, and you can watch city council programs and more. And also, I do want to mention that before I jump into events and other things related to things happening in the city of Missoula, I do have a little bit of time to talk about the Montana legislature. So montana.leg.gov is a wonderful website. .leg.gov. And so this is the, okay. It's probably better if I Google Montana legislature, and then I'll be able to find it. Okay, it's leg.mt.gov. And this is honestly a great website if you're interested in finding out more about House bills and just your local legislature and how the state of Montana runs. You can have your say. You can actually go there, or you can save yourself a trip and kind of sign up for a public comment section under your stay. You can look at some of the bills that are being presented, the bill types, the different things, and where they're at currently in this legislation session. And this will go on well for quite a couple. I would say another month or no. Lightly, I want to say at least until March-ish, maybe even as far as May. So the legislation basically covers 2 years of government because they only meet biannually. So there's a lot of things happening. I don't pay too much attention to the Montana legislature unless it makes some kind of major news, but there's always a lot of bills being put into place. Like I said last week, is that they're putting a lot of red tape laws in place to help streamline permitting process and to move forward with a lot of these programs that would originally take too long just to have to deal with. So that's one of the things that are happening in the current legislation session, regardless of the some of the constitutional language that they're trying to put into place with more anti-abortion funding from the state level to these clinics and so on and so forth. So we're going to jump right into events, and as always, if you're interested in learning more about Missoula Events, you can go to MissoulaEvents.net. Hey, what's happening in Missoula? MissoulaEvents.net, everything you need to know about what's happening in Missoula. Anybody who's anyone post to this, Missoula Downtown Partnership also has a link to this particular page, and you can see this all over. And, you know, it's basically just figuring out what's going on in Missoula. And speaking of, Makerspace is doing a walk-in hours today. So Makerspace here at the Missoula Public Library has very limited open hours, but this is a good chunk of open hours happening from now until about 1 p.m. So it's about learn about resources and make quick crafts, 3D printer. They got a laser printer and a laser carver. So the whole idea is that you can carve into pieces of wood. You can have like a family portrait all lasered onto wood. Anyways, enough of that. Tiny Tales and Storytime also here on the second floor of the Missoula Public Library starting at 10:30 a.m. Yarns and Watercolor on the fourth floor on the Missoula Public Library. Learn to stitch and crochet or just continue a project that you work on in a group setting in a sewing circle. Watercolor is with our building manager, Robert Peltzer, and he is all about helping folks with water painting, watercolor, and just general art, and it's a great resource for folks just wanting to start and wanting to pick up a hobby or continue a hobby throughout the year. Missoula Food Bank meal distribution, they're open at 10 a.m. This is a great opportunity. They don't ask for identification, proof of income, or proof of being laid off from a job. They do not ask for your previous customer at the food bank, and they will not turn anyone away. Food is a basic human right, and anyone and everyone are welcome through the doors for emergency food for you and your family. This is open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Wednesday and Friday is 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Muse Comic and Games January Pinball Tournament. Muse Comic and Games, so this is the place to be if you're all about games, D&D, all sorts of things, and so they're doing a pinball tournament. They do this pretty regularly, so you guys can check this out as well. Preschool Playtime, Roots Acro Sports Center. This is indoor fun for a lot of kids. Hey, you know, it's hard to get outside, especially if you're not a skier type like myself, and do some trampolines and some stuff like that. You can stay active during these cold times. Lego Club is going to be hosted at the library on the second floor. It starts at 2:30, goes until about 5:30. Introduction to Illustration, Lifelong Learning Center. I always like to mention a Lifelong Learning Center because Introduction to Illustration is an Adobe program that kind of helps people with creating magazine documents, photos. It's like Photoshop, but it's a different kind of level of it. So Lifelong Learning Center does this and many other classes that helps folks to get accredited in different certification. These are accredited classes, so you can actually get some certification. They also have a great welding classes that I highly recommend because we're definitely short on basic day laborers like welders as well. So it's a good opportunity, and a lot of people who are getting into the welding business that I know are making six figures easily. So think about that. And you can also socialize with socialists. Hey, you know, Union Club, they're doing a meetup with the Missoula Democratic Socialists, and you can check that out happening tonight at 6 p.m. Cheap date night at Missoula Public Library. So, you know, they're going to be hosting a movie night here at the Missoula Public Library after hours. So starting at 6:30 and start kicking off around, the film starts at 6:30, and they'll be showing Brad Pitt's Bullet Train movie. It's an action comedy, so you guys can check that out. And it's going to be free here at the Missoula Public Library on the 4th floor. Bluest with Violet Danger, Dylan Running Crane, and more at Rock Music at the Zootown Arts Community Center. I also want to give a shout out to them. They just recently had leakage from what I've been hearing, so I don't know if this event may or may not be going on, but you might want to check with them as well moving forward. Puffs, MCT is back with their 2023 opener were about a boy who discovers he's a wizard and becomes a student at a school of magic and mystery. Sounds familiar, right? But the boy is named Wayne Hopkins. It kind of sounds like a hockey guy, and he's sort of as a puff. The Puffs are a group of students focused on not fighting evil and just making it through the magic school. Surviving high school is tough enough. Now add wicked warlocks and creepy cronies on top of studying and worrying about what you'll take to the dance. Basically, drama club at Hogwarts. Anyways, paper pieces, the West Side Theater, Dancing and Such. Nicole Wolcott uses dance theater, spectacle, and papered architecture to explore the world of awkward moments, expose tender collision, and mundane survival. This is called Paper Pieces, and it's going to be some contemporary dancing at West Side Theater tonight at 8. Russ Nassett and the Revelators is going to be Union Club. It's going to be a nice, fun jam band starting tonight at 9 p.m. If you're interested in going out and about on Saturday, just so you know, Orchard Homes Winter Market is happening from 9 to 1 p.m. This is basically just off of 3rd Street, just as you're going up there, not even a block away if you're getting off of Reserve Street. It is a great opportunity for people to do winter market if you're tired of going to the mall and going to the winter market there. But at the mall, they have an indoor winter market that happens during the winter times to supplement your farmers market needs. Family fun time at the YMCA. YMCA during the school year, this is a great opportunity to kind of reconnect with your kids and promote play. It is a great opportunity as well. MCAT also does an orientation every Saturday at 10 a.m. This is basically get connected, be allowed to understand what MCAT, the television program, is all about, learn everything you need to know about producing a show, and just creating your own content as well moving forward. And that happens every Saturday at 10 a.m. It's a drop-in. You don't have to sign up. Tech concert, Tech Time. So this is an important part at the Missoula Public Library, and this is going to usually be in the Ellington Conference Room. This is basically the 3rd floor. And Tech Connect starts at 10:30 every Saturday. And this is basically for folks who suffer from the quote-unquote digital divide. So if you're just like, I don't know computers, get rid of that attitude. If you actually want to learn a computer, just so you know, it's all about figuring things out. And this is a great opportunity to help and have hands-on help to help figure out technology every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Travelers Rest State Park, Shirley Trahan, senior translator and language specialist for the Seshukwa Culture Committee. I'm sorry, I totally butchered that. I was not expecting this. Is actually the first time reading it. I should have read ahead. But committee will share traditional stories and talks about her work to preserve the culture and language of her ancestors. It's in person in Zoom. The whole idea is that it's free for members of Travelers Rest Connection. It's $5 per person. MCAT will also be streaming it on Zoom as well. So you guys can check that out, and it will be on replay on MCAT sometime in the future. Humane Society Pet Vaccine Clinic, Missoula County Fairgrounds, starting at 12 noon tomorrow. It's the Humane Society of West Montana bringing back the Pay What You Can Pet Vaccine Clinic, the fairgrounds. This is basically from 12 to 3 p.m. Be prepared for a long wait because who knows who's going to show up and how long the line is going to be. Saturday activities, not just MCAT's drop-in. Natural History Center is talking about owls, owl palettes. You get a sift through all sorts of tiny bones that the owls have created. This is a great Saturday kids activities. They kind of stole this from MCAT because Saturday drop-ins were so popular. A lot of groups are just being like, oh, well, why don't we just do like a regular Saturday thing, you know? MCAT does our Saturday drop-ins, which is all about stop animation and just basically media, movie making. This is a great way for kids to get involved with MCAT without actually having to come in here and having to figure out what they're going to do. Because a lot of our camps and everything like that, we have guided instruction to kind of get them into making videos. But when people come there kind of like by themselves, it's kind of hard for them to actually start from nothing. And that's kind of what MCAT is that you got to be a producer to work here. You can't just be a consumer and be like, hey, I still have somebody do it over there. What if I can do it? It's like, oh, wait, how do I do that? And then they kind of get stopgap because there's always barriers when it comes to producing television programs, cameras, content, other things like that. So anyways, I'm about running out of time for the morning show, so I have a couple things I want to talk about for Saturday night. Missoula Folklore Society Contra Dance is going to be at Missoula Senior Center, the best dance floor in Montana. Wolf and the Moons at the Old Post. Acoustic music, so it's going to be at the Old Post downtown. Solid Snake Karaoke at West Side Lanes Fun Center, Bowling Alley. Uncle Funk is going to be at Union Club, and then Chris Moon every Saturday at 10 p.m. At the Badlanders. So Sunday, a nice wrap up. If you're interested in doing some bird watching, Missoula County is home to over 200 birds. get a jump on this, it's going to be at Council Grove State Park. The time is 9 a.m. to about 11:30 p.m. It's $25 for non-members and $20 per program. Dance Wonder at Westside Theater. This is open space for people who want to get moved and dance around in a free space. Jazz Night with Patty Nolan and Friends is going to be at the Zach Sunday night, 6:30. Tongue and Groove Poetry Night, tantalizing event spoken word live at the Tongue and Grove. Their poetry will be presented to you and the crowd. We'll judge their favorite poems. The crowd favorite will win. So it's basically like Poetry Slam plus. So it's guys can enjoy that kind of stuff as well. And there's always a lot of events that are happening this weekend as well. You can go to MissoulaEvents.net. But I'm about out of time, and I'm going to say goodbye to y'all. And for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramp, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.